Hey everybody, Todd Vandermite back for another edition of Freedom Steel. This past week, a federal judge gut shot the NFA. So let's take a look at how that all came about and where we go from here. More after the intro. Hey everybody, Todd Vandermite back for another edition of Freedom Steel, former NRA contract lobbyist, Illinois gun law guru, the gun Santa over on Reddit, and current NRA board member. So this week, a federal judge in the Northern District of Texas gut shot the NFA when he issued an injunction and a ruling that sat there and said that you can't enforce the administrative side of the registration, Form 4, fingerprints, and the like when it comes to suppressors, SBRs, SBSs, and AOWs, all as a result of the big, beautiful bill. So how did we get there? Well, it all starts a year ago, and there was a movement to try to pull suppressors out of the NFA. And the American Suppressor Association had introduced, and NRA was supporting the Hearing Protection Act to remove cans from the NFA. And so what happened was we got a chunk of that included in the original House bill. And as it went over, it then went to the Senate. And over in the Senate, there were efforts to add other things to it. But the Senate parliamentarian was not going to allow a wholesale evisceration of the NFA by allowing a lot of those items, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, AOWs, to be simply removed legislatively from the NFA. And she ruled against us. Now, we can have a discussion and a debate about whether or not there should have been a vote to overrule the parliamentarian, that we could have done more. There are both sides to that argument as to what could be done or what might be done in the future. And there are some YouTubers out there complaining that this isn't a permanent legislative fix. And I get it. I get all of that. But NRA was involved with trying to make sure that we got a win out of this. And so when the Senate parliamentarian ruled against us, the NRA had been working on a plan that if our first line of defense fell through, that there would be something else. And the first line of defense was hung up by the Senate parliamentarian. No fault of NRA, it was just the Senate parliamentarian ruled against us, and leadership was not going to buck that. So here we go. So with this, we end up with a $0 tax proposal. And the reason for the $0 was playing a three-dimensional game. We get the $0, then there's a litigation strategy to turn around and go in and sue that because the original rulings upholding the NFA were under Article 1 as a taxing power of the Congress. And since there is no tax to be collected, you can't have all the other stuff. You can't have the registration, you can't have the Form 4, you can't have fingerprints, you can't have all that stuff. And so there was a three-dimensional game that if Plan A didn't work, we had Plan B. And with that, we got the zero tax. Now, mind you, the guys that were in there fighting tooth and nail to get this done were NRA and the American Suppressor Association on the front side, and the other groups were there. And we got, finally got a letter with everybody together on this saying, hey, we'll do a zero tax. But there were elements that wanted a $25. They wanted a $5 tax. Why? Because if you kept that, you kept the other stuff. So, and then there was the Senate Democrats finally figured out what was going on, what the play here was. and what it set us up for within the federal court system, and they tried a $1 tax, because even if it's a $1 tax, then suppressors would remain in the NFA along with the other items. And NRA, along with other people, fought tooth and nail to make sure that that was not going to happen, that it wasn't going to be a $1 tax, it was going to be a $0 tax, because they were already teeing up a litigation strategy to go in and deal with this. Now, why am I talking about all this? Because over the last, since the injunction has taken effect, and here we are on a Friday night, and I'm sitting here watching all kinds of social media stuff, and NRA put out a post on Twitter or X, and with that, a bunch of keyboard commandos have just decided to pile on. And I'm seeing that in some other social media areas. Kudos to GOA for having the PR coup of the decade on this whole thing and getting out there. Well, how did that happen? Because GOA jumped the gun from everybody else and filed first. It happens. But what people don't talk about is that there are two lawsuits in Texas. There's not only the GOA lawsuit, there's the Jensen lawsuit. And the Jensen lawsuit deals with, is funded by the NRA. And the Texas State Rifle Association's involved in that, with a couple other groups that are involved in all that. FPC's involved in the Jensen lawsuit, as is the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. They're involved in there. And that lawsuit was filed, and it got consolidated with the GOA lawsuit. So NRA's been there the whole time. They weren't Johnny-come-latelys and are just now trying to take credit for somebody else's work. Because you know what else is going on? NRA is involved in a lawsuit in the Eastern District of Missouri, to where it's NRA, FPC, Second Amendment Foundation, the American Suppressor Association. They're all over there. And they filed that lawsuit on August 1st of last year. So that lawsuit's over a year old. And we just had an oral arguments hearing this past week, or this past the 10th, whatever day that turns out to be, Monday, Tuesday. And so it went very well for us. And we think we're going to get a ruling. We don't know how soon we're going to get a ruling. But here again, you just don't get a lawsuit moving overnight. And so this is one where NRA has been at the forefront of trying to whittle back and literally gut the NFA. And I can tell you that for those guys that want to complain about 1934, and if you want to complain about 1968, this is not the same NRA. It's not even the same NRA that created the ILA at the 72 revolution in Cincinnati. And the NRA that I'm a member of, and I sit on the board today, is not the same NRA that it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s, or even the early 2000s. This is a whole new 2.0 NRA that is taking on a day. It is not Wayne LaPierre's NRA. And we are working harder than ever for gun owners, not only of the NRA, but across this country, to sit there and take back ground that was lost, and to keep pushing the envelope even farther and farther. So all you keyboard commandos out there, you've either got Irish Alzheimer's where everything goes but the grudges, or you're just wanting to be willfully ignorant and continue to throw rocks because you've got nothing better to do. That's it. Having spent 30 years in the Illinois legislature, having walked those halls and carried the water and tried to prevent bad things from happening and passing good things, I know what it's like. And I know what I did as an NRA lobbyist to sit there and make sure that we didn't lose ground. And we didn't. So I don't have time to respond to every post on Twitter, every comment on Facebook or whatever, but some of the vitriol that's just aimed at NRA just seems to be, haters are going to hate. And there's nothing much else I can do about that. But I figured that with, a few thousand subscribers and followers, that I could at least help set the record straight on what was going on and who was at the lead of a lot of this and who made sure that we got our foot in the door over in the House to make sure that we were part of that final reconciliation conversation. And that would not have happened had it not been for NRA and even ASA being there at the forefront, trying to make sure that we got stuff in the House version to force the Senate into that vote or force them into the position that we got something out of this. And this is a monumental move for all the gun groups. This is the first time that I can ever recall that the gun guys were able to use reconciliation and make some momentous progress on this. Now, yep, we've got some more things to deal with here. I get it. This isn't a permanent solution. But it's the good news that we got, and it's very good news. And sometimes, like Bill Kirk says, our side just ought to revel in the good news. Maybe we're not used to how to deal with good news, but it is good news. And I think that, we were on firm footing with the incoming use test prior. Now I think it gives us something else. I mean, you take the ASA and what ASA started going across the country reforming suppressor laws. And the more the regulations fell off, the more these numbers jumped. And look at what happened between pistol braces and SBRs. ATF said 3 to 7 million braced guns. Congressional Research Office sits there and says 10 to 40 million. I think we're on safe ground with common use. And I think the argument is that once bullshit regulations go away, the people will choose. And this is what they choose. So with all that, I'll say that I think the leadership we have at NRA today is the right leadership who've been writing a listing financial ship and are putting us on a firm footing. And I'm here to make sure that we keep a firm legislative and legal footing to do what I can to point us in a direction. And all you keyboard commandos out there that, just want to rail against NRA, go take a chill pill. Seriously, dude. Just go chill out, sit in the corner for 5 minutes, whatever. So maybe this weekend we'll do something live and talk about it over some brown water or whatever. But as always, thank you for your support. Like, subscribe, copy, paste, share this video around with people. And I'll look to see you on the next one. As always, frag out.